What happened on December 6, 1989 at L'Ecole Polytechnique has often been memorialized within public representation and culture as a spectacular moment in Canadian history. It was an event that for many people seemed unfathomable, stunning, incomprehensible, and difficult to imagine. What does it mean then to remember years later the events of this day? However, it is important to understand this day not simply as a day of remembrance, but also as an occasion that demands us to reflect deeply on the conditions of the present and how we understand our own particular relationships both to the present and to history. It is crucial that we be able to name violence against women not as something that is spectacular, but rather as belonging to the larger fabric of everyday and institutional violences that structure our social realities. Writing about violence against women, Yasmin Jouani reminds us of the frequency and regularity with which it occurs, and that it is first and foremost about power. She reminds us that violence against women includes many different expressions. She writes, quote, "Violence ranges from emotional and verbal abuse to financial, spiritual, and racial abuse. Violence occurs when people are dispossessed of their lands, disbarred from practicing their traditions, forced into contained areas, divested of their property, treated in a discriminatory fashion, and deported against their will. Violence occurs when people are captured and forced into slavery or forced into situations where they have little choice but to be exploited if they are to survive." Indeed, Jouani insists that these are all forms of violence and that they mark the historical record of this country. Violence against women then includes colonialism, poverty, military threat, and the wars that are being waged on people of color and Indigenous peoples around the world. It includes within Canada and North America surveillance, detentions, censorship, and punishment for speaking out. Violence is a product, manifestation, and continuance of centuries of colonial assault, the denial of freedom, the theft of land and resources, and the erasures of languages and customs and the restrictions of movement. Myths, lies, and distortions of history are also forms of violence. It is crucial, moreover, that we understand these questions about life and death as questions about our daily living, the everyday threats and inequities that we face in our homes, in our communities, our places of work, in our schools, our streets, and numerous other places and institutions. But recognizing the everydayness of violence against women and the social institutions that structure violence and power is important because it means then seeing too the everyday and multiple ways in which women from a variety of backgrounds and social locations have resisted and challenged violence also in the context of their everyday lives. In this sense, we can see that crises need not be a paralytic force, but rather an instigator toward education and action, toward both personal and public change. The feminist poet Audre Lorde forcefully reminds us that revolution is not a one-time event. Similarly, she says that revolution is not simply something that happens outside of us, but rather inside of us as well. Freedom, she reminds us too, cannot be understood to belong to the domain of any one group of people. Marginalized women and peoples have resisted and built movements for social change and freedom through a variety of ways, through remembering, naming, speaking, listening, historicizing, through our dreams about what is possible, and perhaps most of all by forging communities, relations, and coalitions on the basis of our shared histories and differences. We tell our stories to figure ourselves not merely as statistics to cite and then forget, to pass over or pass by. Indeed, there are many, many stories that women have to tell about how violence impacts our lives, and most of these stories are not extraordinary or spectacular or exceptional. Rather, they are the ordinary stories of our lives. Thank you.